Okay, welcome back, everybody. So, we're getting into a new topic this week that involves respelling chords the way that we did last week with German augmented sixth chords. This time, we're going to look at how to respell fully diminished seventh chords. So, I've got 4 bars here to show you this first quality of fully diminished seventh chords that I think is worth us talking about. And that is that you can, there's really only 3 of them, as this label says here. So to start with, not starting with this one for a particular reason, so I'm at random. Here's a fully diminished seventh chord where B as in Bravo is the root. And so that has 4 unique pitches because it's a seventh chord. Now, if I move up the scale to C natural, I'm actually going to spell it with a different bass note. I'm going to start with A. Let's say I'm moving this direction. I've got A and C. I'll have E. Oops, didn't like that. I'll have E flat. And I'll have G flat. Remember that this chord is made completely of minor thirds, so if I stack it up kind of in what we call the snowman position, then I'll have, a third from A to C, another minor third from C to E flat, another minor third up to G flat, etc. So there's another one. Let's see, if I move down the scale, I could have this chord. Oops, no, not a sharp. G, B flat, D flat, and not just F, but F flat. Now I have 3 different chords, and when I say unique, I mean that they don't share any pitches. So B flat appears here, but it doesn't appear in either of these 2. If I were to keep going, for instance, let's say I just go chromatically down the scale next, and I had F sharp as my root. You might already know where this is going, but here's F sharp, A, C, and E flat. And if you look at that chord, this is actually not new. We've already seen these 4 pitches. They've just been spelled differently. So here's one with F sharp in it already, G flat. And here's those same 4 pitches just in a different order and some, F sharp spelled differently. So that's not actually new. At some point they start to, oops, that's not what I meant to do. At some point they start to repeat. And so that's an interesting quality of this chord, is that there's only really 3 of them, but you can spell them in lots of different ways. And the spelling is where we're getting our reinterpretation this week, our enharmonic reinterpretation. So just to note, not new. We've already seen that particular one over here. So let's take one of these. This is not one that I just spelled for you. It'll be a little different. Actually, let's be in half notes. So let's say I'm in D minor and I want to have my 7 chord, fully diminished 7th chord. E, G, and B flat. And let's take a minute to label that. First, to note that we're in the key of D minor, like so. Then to put a Roman numeral on it. There's fully diminished 7. And to resolve that in the same key, you could imagine doing something like this, just moving the top 2 and the tenor down a step, and the bass up a step, and ending up on a 1 chord. Pretty typical stuff. That might not be remarkable in itself. The cool thing about this chord, remember when I say something is cool, just lower those expectations, but the cool thing about this chord is that if we respell it, we can resolve it 4 different ways, or 4 total ways, including this one. So here's how we're resolving it, assuming that C sharp is the root. We'll go in order up the chord the way I voiced it here, and next we'll see, well, what happens if instead we spell this chord with E as the root. So think about a fully diminished 7th chord starting on E. If it's a fully diminished 7, that means that E is the root. And if E is 7, then 1 is F. In which case, that's the key that I'm in. So in any case, what does the 7th chord look like in the key of E minor? E and G I'll put in the alto, B flat, you could spell this a different way if you want, or sorry, you could voice this a different way if you wanted. E, G, B flat, and D flat. So notice that this is actually the same 4 pitches that are over here. We've got E, we've got B flat, we've got G, and we've got D flat that used to be spelled as C sharp, now it's spelled as D flat. So when I say respell, that's what I mean. Let's resolve that to 1 in the key of E minor, or F minor. So in that case, we're going up to F in the tenor, down to A flat, F in the alto, and C in the soprano. This is not parallel fifths because this is a diminished fifth and this is a perfect fifth, so that's actually unequal fifths and that's allowed. And let's label that chord as well. Although these are all going to be fully diminished 7 going to 1. It's a bit of an enharmonic magic trick that our particular tuning system allows us to do, to respell things in this way and end up changing keys. Let's do another. So I said we're going to move up this one. We did one where C sharp was the root. We just saw this example where E is the root. Now let's look at one where G is scale degree 7, the root of this chord. So I'll do more of a close spacing here. G, I'll put B flat in the tenor. Again, you can build this fully diminished 7th chord without knowing what key it's in first because we already know that it's a stack of minor thirds. So a minor third above D flat is F flat. Let me add this bar line here just because I want to keep them kind of separate in your minds. And so in what key is this fully diminished 7th chord? The 7 chord. Well, if G is the root and G is 7, then 1 is A flat. Oops, here, let me insert the flat. A flat major. In which case, again, we can put the same label on this. Fully diminished 7 like that. And we can resolve it the same way we've been resolving the other ones, but to A flat major. So note that we've looked at keys, with very different key signatures. So accidentals are just the name of the game from this point forward. Let me space this just slightly differently so that it kind of works out better on MuseScore. That's not too much space, that's fine. So that'll give me a little more room to show you how I'm going to resolve this with both these voices. Oops. Both these voices going to A flat. And then C in the alto and D flat in the, E flat in the soprano. Now you might be saying like, well, the other ones went to minor keys and why would this one go to a major key? And it's somewhat arbitrary because this effect can happen in any key, major or minor. Fully diminished 7th chords are diatonic to minor keys, but by the time this technique is being used in romantic music, composers are also frequently using mode mixture, something that we saw last week as well. So it's common that you would see this chord with a flat 6 on it as a composer is borrowing it from the parallel mode. Could this also have resolved to A flat minor? I suppose so. I think that when we use A flat minor as a key, we tend to more frequently spell it as G sharp minor, although neither one is really that common. Okay, so let me put my last Roman numeral on that. That is our 1 chord in that key. And that double bar. So we've seen C sharp as the root. We've seen E as the root. We've seen G as the root. Now it's time to see B flat as the root. Now a B flat, fully diminished 7th chord would be B flat, D flat, F double flat, and A double flat, and that's a lot of double flats. So in some cases it's easier to change the spelling and just make it kind of more accessible, easier to look at, easier to kind of hear in your mind. So let's do that. Instead of B flat, we can enharmonically respell B flat as A sharp. Now think about what you would need to make a fully diminished seventh chord with A sharp as the root. Again, a stack of minor thirds, so a third above A sharp would be some kind of C. To make it minor, it would need to be C sharp. So C sharp, a minor third above C sharp is E, a minor third above E is G. Now in what key is this going to be the fully diminished 7 chord? If A sharp is the root and A sharp is 7, then 1 is B, and let's make it B minor this time, but again, you can take some liberties there because it could show up in either key. Then let's put some labels. There. And we're going to go to 1 in the key of B minor. So there's our root for that. And notice I'm just collapsing each of these chords in. I want that to be a minor chord, so I need F sharp. We're just collapsing each of these chords in. You can see how they resolve. The leading tone goes up to 1 and the other voices come down, and that's fine. Let's put a Roman numeral on this one chord just so it's not left out to dry. You don't want to confuse anything when you go back and look at your notes. So here's a way of changing the spelling and resolving the same 4 pitches 4 different ways. Because remember, these are the same literal pitches. E's in this chord, and in this chord, and in this chord, and in this chord, but we're spelling them different ways so that they can belong to different keys. It's just a really cool quality of this fully diminished 7th chord, and part of that is because, as I keep saying, it's a stack of minor thirds. That means it's symmetrical in the sense that it's made out of only one kind of interval, and that's part of what gives it this quality. So let's practice respelling these a bit with some exercises. So on your worksheet, it should look like this: Video 1, exercises for practice. So what I'm going to do is give you the first chord root, and these will all be in root position to start with, and the key, and ask you to then respell it as 7 something else in a new key. So we'll start with this. Here's what I mean. Let's see. We'll start here with G sharp. If G sharp is 7, what's the key? Maybe you're already saying it out loud as you watch this video, but think about it for a second. If G sharp is the root, the key is A minor. And as I said, let's start with root position for each bar. So there's G sharp, and my question for you then is, what does this become? And I'll just move that like that. What does this chord become if I respell at least one member? Let's go ahead and spell the rest of it. Let's see. G sharp, and then what other 3 pitches would you need to build a fully diminished 7th chord? G sharp, B, oops, not E, no, D and F. How could you respell that instead of to make it 7 in a different key? Or let me tell you specifically what key I want you to make this 7 in. I want it to be C minor. How can I make this into 7 in C minor? So what is 7 in C minor? First of all, ask that question. If C is 1, then 7 is B as in Bravo, B, D, F, and A flat. Well, the B, D, and the F are already here, and G sharp can enharmonically be spelled as A flat. So don't change the inversion, but do change the spelling. And then we can actually keep those pitches the same. They don't need to be respelled. and keep in mind that we're not actually changing the order of the pitches, and we're not going to put different pitches in here. We're just going to change the spelling. So in this case, instead of just being 7, it's now in a different inversion. This is common that 7 in one key when it's respelled will actually be in a different inversion when it becomes 7 in a different key. So here's 7 fully diminished, and instead of root position, if B is the root, B, D, F, A flat is in the bass, that makes it 4, 2. And that's how this will work. So I'll give you the new key so that you know kind of where we're going. Okay, so let's do another one. This time let's make F sharp the root of the chord. If F sharp is the root of a fully diminished 7th chord, then that means that you need F sharp, A, C, and E flat. And you could voice this differently if you prefer a different kind of arrangement. Oh, let me put E flat here in this tenor. I guess it doesn't like that. It has a limit. Doesn't really matter though, because we're not resolving these chords, we're just spelling them. So F sharp, if F sharp is the 7th scale degree, then that means that this is G minor or G major. You have some leeway where that's concerned. That's not really the most important part of this exercise. In any case, we know that that is fully diminished 7. And we know, oops, whoa, wow, things are happening. There we go. And instead of G minor, let's say we're going to respell the same pitches in the key of D flat major. So I'm going to give it my flat. D flat major. And what will it become in the key of D flat major? So think about this key for a second. The key of D flat is 1. The 7th of that scale is C as in Charlie. And if C is the root of the chord, then we would have C, E flat, G as in golf flat, and B double flat, which apparently MuseScore isn't into, but we can work it out. We'll try. Okay. So instead of spelling this as G sharp or F sharp, we're going to spell it as G flat. We'll still have the C. We'll still have the E flat. And we'll still have, let's see if it'll let me do B flat. Oh, no, it doesn't like that. Will it let me simply insert another one? So it won't let me call this B double flat, in which case if I lower it a half step, now it's an A, in which case it's actually not in D flat anymore. So this is sort of a weird circumstance, but I think it could actually be useful. So instead, if I have to spell it this way, then in what key is this 7? So if we have A, C, E flat, and G flat, and A is 7, A is scale degree 7, then I end up with B flat as my root. Now B flat is my root instead of D flat, in which case if I have A as the root, sorry, B flat's the key that I'm in instead of D flat. If A is the root, then what inversion is this in? A, C, E flat, G flat. Now this one has also become 4-2. So let's do one more. But actually first let me just point out to you again, same pitches. Notice that we only had to make that slight change, and all of a sudden it looks like it belongs to a different key. So that's, again, a cool, although I think it's cool, you might not think it's cool, feature of these chords. Okay, let's do one more. So if we start... Okay, let's do one more. So in this one, we'll start with E in the bass. And since we've already seen this particular set of 4 pitches, we're going to space it a little differently, or voice it differently. E, G, B flat in the soprano, D flat in the tenor. If E is 7, that means that 1 is, let's go with F major, it doesn't really matter. F major or minor, doesn't really matter. It could be borrowed from the parallel F minor and appear in F major. In any case, there's our 7, fully diminished 7 in this key, and it's going to transform, as we spell it differently, into a different inversion in a different key. And so let's make that key, I'm going to tell you, B minor. Now, one of the cool things about these chords is it's not just that we respell them and we modulate, but we modulate to places that are not close together. So G minor and B flat major are relative keys, which is funny, but A minor and C minor are not relative keys, right? And they're not parallel and they're not closely related. So then notice that from here we can go from F major to B minor, as in the tritone key away. So that's pretty far. That's a remarkable way of modulating, and it gives composers a lot of freedom to move around tonally in a way that is harder to do if you're trying to use a pivot chord normally. So anyway, fully diminished 7 in the key of F. In the key of B, remember, we're not going to actually change the order of the notes here. We're just going to respell some of them. For this to be 7 in the key of B minor, what do we need to change? What is scale degree 7 in the key of B minor? Well, I'm so glad you asked. It's actually A sharp. And notice that we could respell the soprano to get our A sharp. So let's do that here. And then what else would we need? A sharp, C sharp, E, and G. Well, we've already got an E, and we've already got a G, and C sharp could actually be spelled in the tenor. C sharp can be spelled in the tenor, and it's enharmonically equivalent to what the tenor used to be. Same as here, B flat, now it's spelled as A sharp. So in any case, it's not in root position though, so let's get a Roman numeral and we can talk about its inversion. We've got 7, fully diminished for sure. And then the question is this in what inversion is this in? We know A sharp is the root. A sharp, C sharp, E, and G. And E is in the bass. E is the 5th of the chord, which makes this, 4, 3, like that. So these chords sound exactly the same, but they would resolve differently, as we're going to see in a minute. Okay, now let's look at these in the context of a progression, and you can sort of see below what's coming in the next video is just on one staff below where we are. I've already written out the bass progression that I want to use, and you can tell from my label that it starts in B minor, and then if you're looking at it, seems like it just goes up by step in B minor, and I want to talk about a way to harmonize that. And then you can probably hear just from the sound of that it cadences in A flat, and you might not know from that much information whether it's A flat major or A flat minor. But let's, as I said in a previous segment, let's go with A flat major because A flat minor is too many flats. Okay, so when you see a bass line ascending by step in this manner, a good idea is to harmonize it moving from 1 to 1/6. Let's write out a couple Roman numerals first. moving from 1 up here to 1, 6. You can connect those with a variety of things. For right now, why don't we just review how to connect them with 5, 4, 3, because I think on the midterm I saw that there was some confusion about how best to harmonize with that chord and resolve it correctly. Here's where our modulation is probably going to happen, right? Because when you see 5, 5, 1 in the bass in a progression like this, you know that this is probably a cadential 6/4 chord. So let's go ahead and label those as they are, except I think it doesn't like my label. 5, 6, 4. Ooh, no, it will. To 5, 3, and in fact, let's go back over here and see if it'll let me do 8. Yes, it will. I've broken its brain. No. Let's add our 7th. Aha, okay. And then we're going to end with 1. Okay, so there's that. I'm going to put 1 back up here. So, in any case, this is our special pivot moment. We're going to put a fully diminished 7th chord in this spot in the first key of B minor. Fully diminished 7 has its root on, we were just looking at that actually, A sharp, right? So we need an A sharp chord here with E in the bass, which is going to make this fully diminished 7, 4, 3, literally the chord I just showed you. However, and here's the sort of unfortunate thing about this software, is that I don't think it lets me put a line where I want one. Let's say I put that here. Will it let me? No. I just want to show you where the modulation is really occurring. So it's 5, 4, 3. That's not a great line, but we can make it work, right? Let me make it a little wider. 5, 4, 3 in the old key. Okay. I already said we know we're going to A flat major. So we'll put that there as a way of kind of accounting for the fact that that's what that is. So there's our new key label. And I'm going to have to enter this part as as text instead, that it's 7 fully diminished. And then in the key of A flat major, we'll have to add an inversion to that in a moment. Let's wait until we get there to figure out what that is. So here's our 1 chord. Let's go ahead and notate the rest of our 1 chord. What I'd suggest is, this is the chord I started with. I think it'd be great if you could pause the video now and start working through it, and then come back and see if we have the same thing. If you started with a different 1 chord, that's totally fine. It would be great if you could take a screenshot and post that in the discussion thread so that I can see that and see how it worked out for you. So if you could post that in the discussion thread, I'd love to see how you did it differently from what I'm about to do. That'd be great. So I'm going to assume now that if you're back, you have paused the video, worked through it a little bit, and you're ready to go. So let's go from here. 5, 4, 3 means that we're going to have F sharp as our chord root. We need A sharp, C sharp, and E. We have C sharp in the bass already. So we're going to move to E natural, echo natural. Oh boy, it doesn't like that in the tenor here. This chord's just going to look weird for a sec. And to A sharp. Our tenor jumped up to the treble clef there, so just don't worry about that. And then we're going to go back to where we were. in the tenor and in the alto and in the soprano. This E is Fa, and it had to go down. It had to resolve down to D in the tenor. And then let's take a look at our 7-4-3. Let's do this. Actually, we're going to make this chord into an 8th note. So let's take a look at this. A fully diminished 7th chord on A sharp, C sharp, E, and G. We can do the A sharp in the soprano. C sharp, looks like we could get there fairly easily in the tenor. G in the alto, and now we have all 4 pitches accounted for. A sharp, C sharp's in the key signature, E, and G. I wanted to do it as 8th note so that we can literally respell it within this moment. So in the key of A flat major, what is scale degree 7? If A flat is 1, scale degree 7 is G as in golf, which means G in the alto is the new root of the chord. So let's go ahead and put that in the alto. G, B flat, D flat, and F flat are the pitches that we need. So here's G, and again, we're not actually changing the voices, we're respelling the voices. G natural, B flat. Instead of C sharp, we'll have D flat, and instead of E natural, we'll have E natural, we'll have F flat. So same exact pitches, just spelled differently so that you can have a minute to wrap your mind around what's happening. Now, if we have G, B flat, D flat, and F flat, then what inversion is it in the new key? It's in 4-2, which I'm actually going to make a new symbol for and just put it like that. So that's a 7 fully diminished 4-2 in the key of A flat. So it's 7 in both of these keys, which is weird for a pivot chord, but that is what's happening. It is a 7 chord in both of these keys, Roman numeral 7, the leading tone 7th chord. It's just the spelling that changes which one is which. So I added again these 8th notes just so that you could see the spelling change and kind of again wrap your mind around the fact that we're going to A flat major. So now to 5, which is where these chords do go often. You're going to have to watch for so many accidentals. Watch for accidentals forever and ever. Because there's going to be a lot going from B major to A flat, B minor to A flat major. Okay, so what else do we need here? We're moving to the cadential 6-4. We need to double the E flat, which looks like we could do in the tenor, and of course it's not going to let me put that in that. And then let's put A flat. A flat is 4 above in the soprano. And C natural. So we need to add a natural for it in the soprano. So from C natural, if C natural is 6 above, it's heading to 5 above. A flat is 4 above, it's heading to 3 above. Actually just G natural in the key of A flat. And E flat stays the same on both, except we're moving down from 8 to 7 above the bass. All of that together sounding like 5, heading to 1. Fa in the alto, or tenor in this case, has to go down to C natural. And G should go up to A flat, and so should the B. Go down to A flat, so we'll spell it just like that. Very strange. I think it will sound a little jarring because I did it in such a short amount of sort of musical time. Let's listen. So there's here's B minor. And then here's fully diminished 7. 7, 4, 3, becoming 7 fully diminished 4, 2. It's jarring, right? It's strange. It's a really big maneuver in 3 bars. So in a real piece of music, it would probably take a little longer. But here, we're just blazing from B minor to A flat major. I wanted that progression at the beginning because it establishes the key. I really like these chords. I feel like they sort of do this like tonal magic trick, and it's really cool in actual pieces of music, but it's sort of like a little mental puzzle in terms of how to actually use them in chord progressions. So we will do some more 4-part writing in the next video as well, and we will look at some examples in the analysis packet. So I will be back with you soon. Bye for now.